Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Hope so you all are fine. Students, today we are going to discuss about the structure of the eye. Basically, you know very well the portion of the skull which is actually protecting the eye is known as the orbit. You have seen that the skull, if you have ever seen the skull, then you have seen that the skull used to have two holes, and these two holes are basically known as the orbit, or you can also call it the socket. Basically, this socket is actually, or you can also call it orbit. So, this socket and orbit is basically the part of the skull that is protecting this sensitive eye. So, this eye used to keep or hold itself into the socket so that it used to keep protected. Okay, if we are going to discuss about the eye, then the Allah Ta'ala have created a beautiful eye. So you can see that this beautiful eye used to have an eyelashes. These beautiful hairs that are present on the eyes, these are known as the eyelashes. Now, what is the function of these eyelashes? These eyelashes or these small hairs used to protect the eye from the dust particle or from the fine particles that can enter into the eye and can damage. So these hairs are basically protecting the eyes from the dust particle, as well as the eyelid is also present, through which you are able to close your eyes and open your eyes. Now, what is the function of this eyelid? This eyelid used to wipe. Yes, it used to wipe the eye, is meant to clean the eye, as well as this eyelid also help in the to save the eye from the dehydration. Dehydration means the loss of the water. So eyelid used to keep the eye safe from the dehydration. As well as if you are going to see that the tears, whenever you used to cry, the tears used to come out from the eyes. So what is basically this? These tears are basically spreading all over the eye. So what is the function of these tears? These tears contain such kind of the, you can say that chemical or such kind of the component which used to kill the bacteria which can cause the infection in the eye. Now, let's see the structure of an eye. Okay, students, if we are going to discuss about the structure of an eye, then basically the eye do have the three layers. The outer layer is basically consists of the sclera, as well as it is also contain this basically sclera and the cornea. The outer layer of the eye consists of the sclera and the cornea. The sclera used to give the white color to the eye. If this is the eye, and if this is, you have seen that the white color of the eye is there, right? So this white color is basically to the layer that is known as a sclera. The sclera used to give the white color to the eye. It consists of the dense connective tissues. Basically, these connective tissues, you will learn about it, but the sclera is made up of dense connective tissues. As well as it used to protect the inner component of the eyes and used to maintain the shape. The sclera is basically, if this is the outermost layer, you can see that this is the sclera. It is protecting the inner part of an eye. As well as it also used to maintain the shape. In front of the sclera, there is a transparent cornea. If this is the layer of the sclera, you can see that if this is the layer of the sclera, in front of the sclera, there is a cornea. This is known as what? This is known as the cornea, and it is a transparent. This cornea is basically transparent. What is the role of this cornea? This cornea used to admit the light to the interior. You can say that it let the eye to get inside the eye and bend the light rays so that they can be brought to the focus. This transparent area, you can say this cornea, is used to admit the light inside the eye so that these light rays can be brought to the focus. This means that obviously better when the light is going to get focused, then you are able to see through your eye. So what actually it means? It means that okay, the outer layer is basically made up of two parts. The one is known as a saclera. The other one is known as a cornea. Basically, the saclera is the outer layer of the eye which is actually protecting the inner part of the eye as well as it is maintaining the shape of the eye. While in front of the you can say that in front of the cornea there is a in front of the saclera there is a transparent cornea which used to let to admit the light inside the eye so that the eye is going to get focus on these light rays. So when once the eye is going to focus, then the image is going to be formed. Now if we are going to discuss about the second layer, then it is like that. The outermost layer is the saclera. You have learned about that. And in front of the saclera there is a cornea. Now the second layer is known as a choroid. This choroid is the second layer of the eye and now what is going on, basically it used to give the dark color to the eye because it contains the blood vessels. The dark color, now this dark color have also a function. Dark color basically prevent the disruptive reflection within the eye. This means that it let the light to, you can say that this dark color used to let the light to get focus. This light is not going to spread or reflect within the eye. So this dark color is basically preventing the disruptive reflection within the eye. Behind the cornea, this is the cornea if you remember, behind the cornea, the choroid bend to form a muscular ring. You can see that this choroid is going to bend. It is not like that it is going to make a complete circle. No, this choroid is going to bend and they used to form a muscular ring. This choroid used to bend and it used to form a muscular ring and that ring is known as the iris. As well as there is a round hole. There is a hole in between the iris and this hole is known as the pupil. The size of the pupil is adjusted by the muscular of the rings, the muscles of the rings. The muscle of the iris used to adjust the holes of the pupil. The pupil constricts in the bright light when the circular muscle of the iris contracts. Similarly, pupil dilate in the dim light when the radial muscle of the eyes is going to contract. Now, if you are going to see in that eye diagram, it will be clear to you that if you are going to look at here, you can see that this is the second layer and this layer is known as the choroid. This choroid used to bend and form a muscular ring. And this bending of the muscular ring is known as the iris. Below the iris there is a hole. And this hole is known as the, you can say inside the iris there is a hole and this hole is known as the pupil. So you can look at here, this is the iris and there's a hole in between the ring and this hole is known as the pupil. The choroid is basically dark in the color and you know the reason. It won't let it basically prevent the disruptive reflection of the light within the eye. The size of basically pupil, the size of the pupil is adjusted by these rings, you can say, through these muscles and these iris. Basically, the size of the pupil, whether it needs to be a larger or whether it needs to be a smaller, is basically adjusted by the iris. Now, when the light is going to enter, the light passes through the cornea and then it used to enter into the pupil. If you remember, then this is basically, you can say that this is the sclera, and in front of the sclera there is a cornea. So below the cornea there is a pupil, and light was entered through the cornea and then it reaches to the pupil, and the pupil is the hole that is present in between the iris. Now, the size of the pupil is going to adjust by the iris. Keep that thing in your mind. Basically, you can say that the muscles, the iris do contains two muscles. The one is the radial muscle and other one is the circular muscles. The circular muscles are just like a circles, and the radial muscles are in the longitudinal form. Have you ever observed the eye closely? If you are going to observe the iris more clearly, you will see that there are the iris around your eye, and it contains two types of muscles, circular and the radial. I will show you a real eye after that. Okay, now what is going on? As I told you, this black is basically the pupil. This black is basically the pupil, a hole. This hole used to adjust by the muscle that is known as the iris. And iris have the muscular ring, as I told you before, and this muscular ring have two types of the muscle, the radical muscles and the circular muscles. The iris used to dilate, you can say the pupil used to enlarge itself. Its size used to enlarge when the radial muscles are contracted and the circular muscles are relaxed. Now, what actually it means, let me to explain you in detail. Listen to me very carefully. What is happening here? The iris, you can say that the pupil, you can say, the pupil is basically size is going to control by the iris. If the iris circular muscles are going to relaxed and the radial muscles are going to contract, then the iris size used to increase. Now you can see here that the muscles of the radial are contracting, they are not relaxed, while the circular muscles are relaxed. You know better about contract and relax. Relax means relax and contracted means shrinking. So this is the iris. This is the pupil. Its size is going to be larger. But what? When the circular muscles are going to relax and the radial muscles are small, like they are contracted, so the pupil is going to enlarge its size. But in the case of, you can say that in the case of other case, that pupil, when the pupil size is going to decrease, the pupil size is going to decrease, you can see here, when the circular muscles are contracted and the radial muscles are relaxed. So you can see here that the iris size is going to get, the pupil size is going to get small when the circular muscles are going to get contracted and the radial muscles are going to get relaxed. So in that case, the pupil size is going to decrease or reduce. Okay, so you can see through this image that this is the outer layer and this is known as the sclera. And in front of the sclera, this is basically known as the cornea. The second layer is dark in color due to the presence of the blood vessels. And This is basically going to make a muscle. It is going to bend itself and it is going to make a ring around. And around that ring there is a hole, and this hole is known as a pupil, while this ring is going to known as the iris. The light used to enter from the cornea and will reach to the iris. This dark color used to actually help to prevent the disruptive reflection of the light in the eye, so that there is no more disruptive reflection. As well as the size of the iris, we have learned that is used to control the size of the pupil used to control by the iris. Okay students, so this is the original eye, and you can see here more clearly that this is basically the eye, the beautiful eye, and there are the eyelashes, and this is basically the eyelid as I told you before. Now look at here that this white color is the outermost layer of the eye, and this is known as a sclera. Well, this is the hole, that is, you can say that this is basically the muscular ring, and this muscular ring is the choroid that used to bend around, and this is known as the iris. And inside the iris there is a hole, and this is known as the pupil. Now students, if you are going to look it more clearly, then you can see that there are basically the muscles. And right now what is going on, that this iris is basically small in the size, this pupil is constricted. It is not dilated, it is constricted. It have reduced its size. So you can see here more clearly that the radial muscles are basically dilated and the circular muscles are constricted. So due to that, the iris size is basically, the pupil size is basically reduced. The reason is that the radial muscles are dilated and the circular muscles are constricted. If the iris, you can say if the pupil is going to increase its size, then the condition will be the opposite of it. The condition will be in that case like that. Radial muscles is going to constrict and the circular muscles are going to relax. Hope so you understand this point. So this is basically the eye. Now what is going on? The scalp pad, which is basically protecting the eye, as I told you before, is the orbit or the socket. The eye is basically round in a shape so that it can see the 3D image. As well as there are the muscles which are basically bonding the eyes. The reason is that these are basically muscles are helping in the movement of the eye. You can see here, you can see the white color, and this white color is basically the dense connective tissues, and these dense connective tissue is basically the sclera. The next dark layer is the choroid, and we are going to learn about the retina later on. This outermost layer is basically the white in the color, and this is known as a saclera. It used to keep the, you can say that the shape of the eye, as well as it's used to protect the inner material of the eye. Moreover, you can see that this transparent is known as the cornea that is present in front of the sclera. Behind that, there is an iris, and that is a muscular ring made by the choroid. In between the iris, there is a hole, and this hole is basically known as the pupil. This pupil dilation and relaxation, constriction is going to control by the muscles iris. Now we are going to learn about the third layer. Let's see.